Let's get into the discussion now. The Senate seems to have bowed to public pressure on the electronic transmission of election results, as it has now restored Inec's exclusive right to decide on the matter. National Assembly correspondent TVC News On reports on this.
Senators and the public, especially electoral reforms advocates, clashed on issues that had to do with the amended Electoral Act bill. But now lawmakers are back to the drawing board as they begin the harmonization of this critical piece of legislation. It was not an entirely lovey-dovey deliberation, as tempers soon flared. Some senators were unhappy about the decision of the upper legislative house to adopt the position of the House of Representatives on Section 87, which deals with the conduct of political party primary election.
We all agree that some of us have problems with our governors, but that should not tie the party to only one choice. We must give the party opportunity to practice democracy. Democracy is all about choices. If we tie the hands of the political parties to only direct primaries, it means we are not giving the parties the opportunity to practice democracy.
I really believe that if this our democracy will be strengthened, if this our democracy will grow, and if we are going to be able to take it to anything close to global best practice standards, it is time for us to adopt direct mode of primaries.
Okay. Asking them to come and vote will require a lot of enlightenment rather than having the indirect that would limit the numbers of those who will participate in primary elections. So I hold the view, Mr. President, that it is more cheaper, less cumbersome to have indirect primary elections.
The upper chamber finally resolved that political parties seeking to nominate candidates for elections shall hold direct primaries for aspirants to all elective positions, which will be monitored by Inec. The Senate insists this will strengthen the internal democracy among political parties.
A bill for an act to repeal the Electoral Act and enact the Electoral Act 2021 and for other matters connected there with 2021, third reading taken and the bill is passed.
The Senate also expunged the controversial amended Clause 52, subsection 3 of the Electoral Bill, which subjected transmission of election results by the Independent National Electoral Commission to the approval of the Nigerian Communications Commission. TVC TVC News, Abuja.
Joining me now to discuss and make sense of these issues is Dr. Dan Ekere, lecturer, University of Lagos. It's good to have you join me, Doctor.
Thank you so
much. It's a long time now.
Yeah.
It's good to have you back.
It's a pleasure to be back.
All right.
It's as good as home.
No, of course, of course. You're a family member. So, all right, now let's get to this issue. I believe you've been following the developments in there. When it comes to the electronic transmission of election results, that the move by the Senate has been receiving a lot of kudos from so many Nigerians. But what is really going to change about this from what you are viewing about this?
Yeah, thank you so much. The first thing to observe there is that it shows that initially the Senate was not even sensitive enough. In fact, the National Assembly as a whole, to the extent that they passed a bill that prohibits, electronic transmission, when in actual fact, the rest of the world is moving that they are already there. We are trying to catch up, and yet you see trying to slow down the pace. So for me, it's a good development that the people eventually came out to, protest kind of, to raise that awareness that there's a need for this thing to happen. Now, with respect to what will change, the fact that they have even accepted that the Inec should be independent enough to determine whatever mode of, voting, transmission of results and the rest, is already a change. It shows that you are giving Inec the independence that it deserves. Why should Inec be twisted to the extent that the NCC will be the one to... So It's as good as saying that the NCC is now part of INEC.
Exactly.
Because I don't see why we should ever consult NCC. The only body that is licensed, authorized, empowered by law to conduct an election is INEC. So if there's any question you have to ask or needed to ask or is going to ask, it should always be about INEC. Let INEC be the one to tell you, we do not have capacity to do this. Yeah. Not any other person. You don't circumscribe that particular responsibility.
But INEC has continually said they have capacity,
exactly.
They have the willing, they have everything it takes to ensure that they do electronic transfer.
Exactly. So that is why it becomes even more worrisome that the INEC that is charged with the responsibility of conducting an election has told you from day one that we have capacity to do this. We'll be test running. As a matter of fact, I have done collation too, and I saw where that was actually going on. While you are doing the manual, somebody else is taking the whole thing electronically and will send it to a pool, which I cannot tell where it is anyway. But that has been happening. Now, in order to fortify it, to perfect it, it is through practice. Now, the time has now come for INEC to continue on that line in order to perfect the strategy. You now said you are taking that responsibility away from them. So I am thinking that they have it is now they are realizing that they are actually there to represent the people. They can't be wiser than the Nigerian people. We voted them there. And what ideally, they are there to represent us. The interest of the people has always been to have the fairest election we can ever have. And one sure way of doing that is this electronic, transmission of results. As a matter of fact, we should even be embracing electronic voting as well. Because the idea of everybody coming to a particular spot to queue up makes it easier for them to be susceptible to all forms of manipulation. If I am to vote from the comfort of my house, you might not have access to me at home, and you will not influence my choice. So I needed to have that privacy to be able to do that if I so choose. But for those who might not have what it takes to do that at home, if there's a spot where they have to do that, well and good. But to now say that is not acceptable, for me, it was the most worrisome.
When it comes to the electronic transfer of results, there are still concerns that there are parts of this country where there is no network signal and all of that. How much of a challenge do you think that is going to pose?
I do not think there's any challenge with that.
Okay.
Because is there any part of this country where INEC has not conducted election? I recall that even at the heat of Boko Haram attack, we saw more votes from that neighborhood. So I'm thinking that we shouldn't cry more than the bereaved. INEC should be the one to do this, weeping and wailing and the rest to say, oh, we do not have what it takes to transmit these things electronically. But for us to begin to assume the pain of INEC, that you cannot do this, when even INEC is saying, I have what it takes to do it, for me, it only shows that there was something fitching, something was being, trying to get covered there.
Does this end in fact, if you flip the coin to the issue of direct primaries that the Senate, had also passed and talked about, that has generated a little more debate away from the electronic transfer, which received lots and lots and lots of kudos and commendation. But if you talk about the issue of direct primaries, that is another thing altogether.
Exactly. But who is crying? Who is crying? Is it the party members? So that is the real challenge with politics, particularly in Nigeria. The politicians who are in office are the ones who are crying. The party members have not said we don't want it. They have not said we don't have capacity to do it. They have not said that we don't. As a matter, what is your fear really as a party member? That we want to elect or nominate a candidate and we want all of us to participate. After all, we've all been crying for this so-called democracy of a thing. Now, part of it is that if we have differences with respect to who should represent us, then we show it by way of choice making. And now we want everybody to be part of that choice making, to see it instead of being reported to. Now you will participate, you'll be very sure that the votes actually count. So what is the fear there? But again, if you begin to look at it from the point of view of the arguments some of them are making, you are trying to say, okay, the parties do not have a choice to make choices. That's equally another aspect of it. I think that's the argument. But on the whole, I think that the important thing to look at is where the people actually situate themselves. Are they against direct primaries? We have at a point, or sometime we make reference to Professor Nwosu's election of Option A4.
Option A4, 1993.
So if that becomes the way to know who is to represent us, if that becomes the way to choose fairly, what is wrong with it? I don't really see much. Much of this cry is actually about those who want to contest positions, and there is this cry that governors have taken over the machinery of the parties and the rest of it. Yeah, it is equally part of their constitutions and the way they are running their parties. Otherwise, the governors are simply members of the party. If you run your parties in a manner that everybody is a financial member, those who are members are financial members. If you are not waiting for the governor to bankroll your activities, then why would the governor hijack the entire machinery? But these days, once a particular party wins election and their candidate is the one on the seat, they see the state as their estate. They see it as their private treasury. So at the end of the day, when the governor keeps doling out resources to bankroll the activities of the party, why would you expect him to equally dictate how the party runs its affairs? So that is the real challenge. I think the point has come where political parties begin to run political parties the way they ought to be managed, such that you do your normal, payment of dues, you become a stakeholder.
In fact, in the First and Second Republic, that was what was done.
Exactly. But these days, instead of paying, you are the one who is coming to collect. Much of the party members go there with the hope of getting something back.
Especially in the Second Republic, when we saw a lot of, we were kind of young, but we saw at that time when party members who pay something. There was, everybody had a card. My grandmother had a card.
At least I saw people there, even though we did not vote, but at least we saw what happened.
Exactly.
So it was at that point, the machinery of the party was in the hands of the people because they were the sponsors. They were the ones financing the party. But these days, you now find a scenario where some governors have become superhumans simply because of the state treasury, not because of any unique thing they have done, but they are the signatories to the treasury of the state, and most of the time nobody accounts for what is happening. All we hear is cry for, oh, no resources, the resources are meager and all of that, we want more from Abuja and the rest of it. But what happens to the state, nobody knows. You equally have issues of security votes that are never voted for security, and some of them go into party affairs. And again, the people are always so happy expecting money from governors, such that at the time they finish eating from the governor, they wouldn't have a choice but to dance to the tune of the governor, just like
especially party delegates.
Exactly.
We understand at that time, all of them just buy new cars. Those who marry new wives, marry new wives.
In fact, one of the state primaries that took place, some time ago, we understood the delegates, some of them made as much as 10-20 million.
Wow.
Because they will just calm them somewhere and somebody comes and starts sharing money, and unfortunately they now share money in dollars, so you'll be so worried that where have they actually made this money from?
But would this take care of what they call the godfatherism thing? Would it put an end to that?
Can godfatherism ever be taken away from politics? It's not possible.
Okay.
At best, you can.
So it's not necessarily negative when you have a godfather in a political party.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a. In fact, in life generally, there's somebody somewhere who acts as a godfather of a kind. So if that is the issue, that's not a problem. The godfather will not stop you from living your life. At best, he gives you guidelines. At best, he shows you some level of interest. It's just like, a parent giving, a child guidance sometimes. But the only challenge is that some of them could be extremely greedy. So greedy to the point that they even go as far as, becoming occultic. They now swear, go to shrines, swear to oaths and the rest of it. At the end of the day, they do all manner of fun. That's just the problem with it. Otherwise, I do not think that it is so easy to do away with godfatherism in politics, because the way politics is, by its own nature, seem to even give room for godfatherism. So
somebody has to be a leader somewhere.
Certainly.
All right. We have to leave it here now. Dr. Danekere, thank you so much for coming on the program. Thanks for your insight.
Thank you.
And welcome back.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Right.